The runway is right there. Perfectly aligned, clear night, calm winds, there is no weather, no traffic, no warning. And yet, speed, silence, speed. The aircraft is descending through 900 feet. It is 20 knots fast, and no one in the cockpit has fully grasped what that means. In less than 1 minute, Flight 728 will face a problem that isn't mechanical. It isn't dramatic. It isn't even rare. But it is one of the most dangerous situations in aviation. This is the story of how a normal landing became anything but. It was 6:18 in the evening when Flight 728 began its descent into Westbridge International Airport. The aircraft was a 9-year-old narrow-body jet with over 24,000 flight hours, a routine airliner, reliable, predictable. On board were 162 passengers and 6 crew. The flight had been smooth from departure to cruise. No turbulence, no system messages, no abnormalities logged during the climb. Nothing about this flight suggested it would later be discussed in training departments and safety briefings. But aviation accidents rarely announce themselves early. They begin quietly. In the left seat sat Captain Daniel Mercer, 52 years old, with more than 11,000 flight hours. A former military transport pilot, disciplined and experienced. He had landed at Westbridge dozens of times. To his right sat First Officer Liam Rahman, 29 years old, with 1,200 total flight hours and just over 300 on this aircraft type. Competent, careful, but undeniably junior. Experience gaps in aviation are normal, but in moments of doubt they matter. Passing 12,000 feet, air traffic control issued an unexpected instruction. Traffic behind them was descending faster, so Flight 728 was asked to increase its descent rate. The captain complied. Vertical speed increased, thrust reduced. At first, everything appeared stable. Then the speed began to rise. 5 knots above target. Then 8. Then 12. The first officer noticed it first, speed trend increasing. The captain glanced down briefly. It'll settle. But it didn't. The auto throttle was engaged. The display confirmed it, yet the thrust levers were slow to respond. They moved, but not with the crisp precision pilots expect. 3 days earlier, this same aircraft had logged a technical note: auto throttle slow response during descent. Maintenance had tested the system. No faults were found. No restrictions were applied. Now, descending through 6,000 feet, the speed continued creeping upward. There was no warning chime, no failure light, just numbers gradually drifting out of place. And time was compressing. At 3,000 feet, the aircraft intercepted the glide slope, slightly high, slightly fast, still recoverable. This was the moment the approach could have stabilized. Instead, the captain pulled the thrust levers back toward idle to correct the speed more aggressively. The engines spooled down. The nose lowered slightly as the descent rate increased. Now they were fast and descending steeper than planned. 2 problems competing for attention. Reduce speed and the sink rate increases. Reduce sink rate and speed builds again. Energy management in a jet aircraft is a delicate balance, and at low altitude, that balance becomes unforgiving. At 1,000 feet above ground level, standard operating procedures are clear. If the aircraft is unstable at this point, the approach must be discontinued. Flight 728 was 18 knots fast. The descent rate was slightly above target. Power adjustments were still ongoing. Unstable, the first officer said. There was a pause. Outside the windshield, the runway looked perfect, centered, calm, inviting. Inside the cockpit, the instruments told a different story. "We're fine," the captain replied. The approach continued. At 700 feet, the speed was still high. The captain tried to manage it with pitch adjustments. Thrust remained near idle. The aircraft crossed the runway threshold carrying more energy than it should have. Jets do not slow down instantly, they float. And this one floated. Past the aiming point markers. Past the touchdown zone. Still airborne. Still fast. Half the runway was already behind them. "Go around," the first officer asked again. The words hung in the air. A go-around at this point would be safe. Embarrassing perhaps, inconvenient but safe. Instead, the captain chose to salvage the landing. He held the nose slightly high, waiting for the aircraft to settle onto the runway. It touched down nearly 1,800 meters beyond the threshold. Hard. Spoilers deployed, reverse thrust engaged, maximum braking applied. But braking effectiveness decreases at higher touchdown speeds, tires strained, anti-skid systems pulsed rapidly. The runway end lights grew closer. There was no more pavement left. The aircraft overran the runway, rolling beyond the paved surface into the safety area before finally coming to a stop. Inside the cabin, passengers sat in stunned silence. There was no fire, no structural breakup, miraculously no fatalities. But the aircraft was severely damaged. The investigation that followed found no catastrophic mechanical failure. The auto-throttle system had operated within certification limits. There was no major system malfunction. Instead, investigators identified a chain of human factors. A compressed descent after a late instruction from air traffic control. A subtle over-reliance on automation. Plan continuation bias, the powerful psychological tendency to continue with an original plan despite warning signs. And an authority gradient that made challenge possible but difficult. At 1,000 feet, the aircraft was unstable but recoverable. At 500 feet, the option to go around still existed. Below that, physics took control. In aviation, speed is energy, altitude is energy, and energy must be managed precisely. Flight 728 did not nearly end in disaster because of weather, or sabotage, or sudden failure. It nearly ended in disaster because of momentum, both aerodynamic and psychological. The safest decision in aviation is often the simplest one. Stop the approach. Apply thrust. Go around. Try again. Because sometimes, too fast isn't just a number on a display. It's the last warning you get.